Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your time today. I'm exceptionally excited to be introducing Nonku from Discovery Health to you. And we will be speaking about real issues for women, especially post the pandemic. Nonku, in your view, we've seen at PSG mental and stress-related conditions improving. Is that your experience, and what do you see in the bigger scheme of your business?
It's a brilliant question, Nerine. Firstly, thank you for having me. It's wonderful to be here. We've seen a significant increase, particularly on the mental well-being side. The actual number is 176% in our EAP of people who are reaching in order to get support from a mental well-being perspective. In addition to that, if you look at a macro level, you can see that there are parallels. And the reason I say that is we saw, as an example, the floods in the country. That created a huge amount of strain. We provided support, and then again, you see an increase. You'll remember last year we saw the riots. That created, again, angst, and then again we see an increase. But what is interesting for us right now is that we're seeing a sustained use, particularly of that mental well-being pillar, where people feel like they're in real trouble. Issues of depression, issues of anxiety, issues of attempted suicide have increased substantially. We see it in our base in terms of the employers we support, and we see it also within our own business, where a lot of our people are reaching in and saying, we need support. Frankly, that energizes me, that the issues of mental well-being are no longer taboo, where people feel embarrassed and ashamed, because all of us, to a certain extent, because of the COVID pandemic, are in the same space. All of us have been impacted in some way, whether you felt anxious about what's happening with COVID, what's happening in the country, all of us have felt in some way that we need additional support.
How do you maintain strong leadership and bringing whatever you learn in your world of leadership in a large corporate like Discovery? How do you take that home to your children and your daughters?
Oh, my daughters, you make me smile. Let me just lean back maybe and say, Nerine, for me, the first place to start very simply is vision and a purpose-led organization. And I learned a long time ago, in fact, I learned while I was married, that it is so important to apply the same principles in terms of, vision, purpose, values, and what you want for your family, in the same way you apply them at work. So in terms of my kids, I think as a family, we've got clarity in terms of what I want for them, what we want as a family, what are our values, what's important to us. So I'm hoping that in the home, I'm almost leading the same way as I lead at work. I think my kids would laugh, but one of the things that I'm very strict on is their marks, right? So my little one came the other day and she brought 78% and says, isn't this great? It's better than last time. I'm like, we're not a 78% family. And I said that because I know that she can be excellent. And for me, excellence in what we do is one of the things that's important in our home space, and therefore I duplicate it. I'll give you another example. An important part of the way I lead here with my own team is connectedness, and in textbooks now, they call it play. And play is about being creative together so that you can innovate and think broadly. So within my home, I do exactly the same. When the girls are with me, there's a lot of play, and I'm intentional about it because we can be so busy. And I try to instill the same at home, right? Time is tight, so I have to be deliberate about where I spend the time, but I spend the time in play with my kids. I'm playing cards, I'm playing Uno, I'm playing Monopoly Deal, and there's so much learning. Firstly, there's competitiveness and how to handle each other. There's tactics in terms of what they need to apply. They have a mother who's also very competitive, so at the end I'll say something like, loser! But again, it's how they almost internalize that and know that we can have fun together and grow together. So for me, there are complete parallels. You need to treat your home life, your children, how you think about them, how you vision for them, how you dream into the future in the same way that you treat your business life.
The big relevant question that all of us ask, balance. Discovery Health has always been well known of activating wellness, health, fitness, moving. How do you manage to balance being in executive leadership as a young woman with a family and your own goals?
That's a brilliant question. I guess my first line is what balance? I actually have learned a while ago that that's a difficult thing to do. If you want to have a home life, have a work life, have a social life, it's impossible to do. And I've actually come around and I'm embracing this concept of work-life integration, because that's really what it is, right? You've got to find joy and spaces all the time to become brilliant in whatever you do. So you might be at home. I might have to be at home, cook for the girls, play with the girls a little bit, put them down, and then start working. That for me gives me balance, because it says I'm on top of my home life, I'm spending time with my kids, but after that I feel like, oh, I'm on top of my work life and I feel in control because I know what's happening over there. So really, I think the trick here is how do you bring all of these two things together? The other thing that I've started to do, particularly linked to well-being, is about how do you take pleasures in life? And I learned this from Oprah's book. So we work hard, but we must take pleasures that keep us well. And so I'll give you a good example. I hike every Saturday, as long as I'm here. Actually, even when I'm not here, I was away and I did the same. And when I hike, I do three things. The first is I am becoming, in terms of my physical well-being, power is happening, right? I'm powering through the woods. Secondly, in terms of almost that spiritual well-being aspect, I'm in nature, I'm seeing the beauty, I'm absorbing it, it's nourishing me, I'm really just almost lapping it up. The third thing is happening. I always take an audiobook. So I'm either learning, and if I'm not learning, I'm basically lost into this world of mystery and wonder. I'm learning about new characters. I'm immersed in their lives. So in that one activity, I'm doing three things. I'm looking after my physical well-being, I'm looking after sometimes my emotional well-being, and I'm looking after my spiritual well-being. And for me, that is balance. Finding spaces to integrate the stuff that you need to do in a meaningful way that gives to you, your mind, your body, your emotions, while you achieve the things that you want to achieve.
How important is holistic well-being? Do you see it in your own life, and what does it mean to you?
You know, Nerine, in the work that I do, I've had to understand what holistic well-being means. And maybe that's a good place to start. The way holistic well-being is defined sort of globally, they look at 5 key things. They look at physical well-being, they look at emotional well-being, spiritual, social, I'm forgetting one, spiritual, social, and intellectual well-being. So like, are you feeding your mind? I've decided that you cannot have 5, you need to have 6. So I actually need to rewrite all of sort of the global articles that are on the web. The 6th one for me is financial well-being. What I've come to learn is that most things that we go through in life impact the bottom line, and the bottom line is your pocket. And I'll give you a simple example. I went through a divorce a little while ago. Praise God, we are all good, and we're in good terms with my ex-husband. He's just really sad he lost me, but you know, we all have to lose something sometime in life. But more seriously, during that time, all of those things were impacted, right? I physically actually wasn't well. I had to realize that I have to stay physically strong, look after my body, eat well, because actually your body takes a beating when you are in high stress situations. My emotional well-being needed attention, so I was seeing a psychologist for my emotional well-being. My social well-being became crucial. That talked to my family and how they were looking after me. My mom moved in with us to help me with the girls. My friends were there like pillars because they knew they had to surround me. And in terms of spiritual well-being, I remember a trauma counselor saying, if you are ever in a traumatic episode, and divorce is traumatic, you need to go back to the things that give you strength. And for me, one of those things is God. I'm a believer. And I remember going to church at 7 a.m. It was the earliest service there was. I don't think I'd ever seen it before then. I always went to the 10 a.m. But because my spiritual well-being was key at that point in time, it held me up and it looked after me. And then finally, from a financial perspective, I had to understand, what does this mean? I'm going from a dual income household to a single income household, and how do I need to make changes and how do I need to manage that? So when I think about my well-being, those are the 6 pillars I think through, and it is critical to stay aware of which pillar is sort of waning at any point in time, because sometimes certain pillars, you are a tower of strength, and other pillars are waning, and you need to be hyper aware so that you know how to balance it.
As you should know, PSG is well known as one of the most successful advisory and investing firms. I also know that you are very passionate about investing in yourself. How do you do that?
Nerine, it's so critical to invest in oneself, because I'm a firm believer that you can't pour out of an empty cup. You've got to fill the cup up first in order to be able to pour into others. And you know, I read a book by Oprah Winfrey called What I Know for Sure. And there was a quote in there that said, "A man who dies with many toys is still dead." And you know, it was such an eye-opener, because basically what it was saying is that you can hoard many things, you can be working all the time, it can be about what you want to have. But if you don't invest in yourself, by the time you die, there's probably lots of regrets, but you've left emptiness in terms of this life. And then she went on to say in the book that she works very hard, but she also takes her pleasures very seriously. And I love the idea of the pleasures. So she talks about a 4 out of 5 pleasure, a 5 out of 5 pleasure, different things in her life. And for me, I've really almost leveraged the idea in order to fill my own cup. So I'll give you examples. So, to spend time with my partner, which is really hard in day-to-day. He works hard, I work hard, I have kids, it's complex. We go away once a month, or at least we try, and we've tried to find different places to spend time together. And when we're there, we try not to be anybody's mom, dad, sister, brother, just the 2 of us. And I call that a 5 out of 5 pleasure. Because firstly, it fills my spirit and my soul, and I love travel and I love beautiful places. When I told you about the hike, for me, that's another 5 out of 5 pleasure, but it does the things about wellness, physical, emotional, mental, and it does like magic. When I play with my kids, 5 out of 5 pleasure. When I spend time with my friends, 5 out of 5 pleasure. When I see people getting the cover they deserve, or somebody who never had any kind of healthcare cover. I remember we got a letter and the person was just saying they got their tooth extracted. And they never had to wait. In a clinic, they would have waited days and the pain would have been excruciating. And they just wanted to say thank you. 10 out of 5 pleasure. And that's how I replenish myself.
Tell us about the role within Discovery and the multiple hats that you wear as a woman executive in this business.
I've been very blessed, Sherilee. I've played many roles in this business over many years. I often say to people I wear blue underwear, but more recently I've learned that it's maybe better to say blue blood runs through my veins. It's just more kosher. But more seriously, I play in 2 parts of the business. The one part of the business is Discovery Health. Very passionate about that business. I think it drives a very important purpose of making people healthier and protecting their lives. And within that business, I'm the Chief Growth Officer. What that means very simply is that I look after the growth of all of our other streams of business outside of the medical scheme. So it is, how can we make healthcare accessible to millions more in this country? As you know, because you work in this space, we have about 9 million people that are covered within the medical, that have some kind of medical aid cover. And yet in this country, there are 60 million people. We don't have a state capability that can look after all 60 million. So really what gets me up in the morning and gets me energized is the idea that we can provide quality, affordable healthcare to millions more in this country. Personally, I have family members that can't access or afford medical aid cover. So to think that there's a solution, an alternative for them really drives me. So that's really my passion. But within my portfolio, there are many other solutions such as gap cover, EAP. We're looking after the COVID business solution during COVID. So any kind of solution that can expand healthcare, I look after. In addition to that, at a group level, I work with colleagues where we're trying to work on the integrated value proposition. Discovery has so many products that are rich in their own way and as individual products. But when you bring these together, especially for an employer, you can make magic. So the thinking here is about how do we bring them together? How do we make them more potent for the employees, that the employees really can live better, work better, retire better? And so at a group level, I look sort of after integration and strategic clients in terms of doing that.
Nerine, you mentioned earlier about well-being. Regarding the importance of well-being, how do you maintain a strong leadership voice within your space?
That's such an important question. And my belief simply is that you've got to walk the talk. And I'm going to give 3 examples where the walk the talk is important in terms of the leadership voice. So the first one, I think, is in your actual team, my individual team. And the way I do it there is really by dialoguing around it quite openly. Everybody knows that physical well-being is important. When somebody's going through a hard time, they're able to give me a call and say, in fact, we're now calling them well-being days. And I understand exactly what that person means, and I give them the permission, the privacy to be able to have it. So I think just being very open, vocal, and encouraging to your own team, it really fosters an environment of well-being and wanting to talk about well-being. The second part, and now I'm going to talk about being a leader in the broader context of discovery. I've been part of the leadership dialogues where we're talking to individual teams in smaller communities around well-being or broader webinars. And what I've found to be really meaningful there is being authentic and being vulnerable. People will not open up unless they're willing to see that you too are a human being, are vulnerable. So, when I share about my divorce, it's not a mistake. It's because I've understood that when people see that you're a human being, you also have hard times. You've had to leverage emotional well-being support, financial well-being support, physical well-being support. People are willing to talk about their stories. And you can't actually imagine the magic we've seen in this business. I remember doing a round table with a few people, and employees were sharing that during COVID, I remember one young lady saying it was such a frightening time for her. And she was experiencing quite a large bout of depression. And she never understood what depression even meant. But she would remember the words healthy company, which is our employee assistance program. And she said that was the first time she picked up the phone to phone us when she felt like I'm in trouble here because the voices in my head are saying the wrong thing to me. And that was quite powerful for her to share it in that forum, and then other people could share. And that started by me being vulnerable and open about some of my challenges and struggles during COVID. And then finally, it is important that you live the well-being and leadership well-being brand beyond just the confines of your own business. Because we're not just leaders here, we should be leaders in our communities, leaders in our country. And I'll give you one last example. There are many times, I think, when things in this country happen and you feel firstly shell-shocked and upset and anxious. But the one thing that I ask myself is, what of what is happening is my role, and what difference or what small light can I shine? And I remember a few weeks ago, I was driving from Marlborough, from renewing my license, and I was driving past Alex, and as I was driving, I was listening to the news, and they were just talking about the spate of shootings and the people who had been killed. All of us have been privy to this. And I remember I was so upset and so anxious, and I'm like, how can this be happening? I was literally driving past Alex, looking at people walking and thinking, could have been you, could have been you, could have been me. And in that moment, I had to think, what can I do? I mean, it's already a bad situation. What small light? And I picked up my phone, and I phoned my colleague who heads up Healthy Company now. And I phoned and I said, we need to do something. Can we just reach out to the station manager? Can we find out how can we support with trauma counseling? Can we reach out to those families that probably have different access to the access that we have? So where Healthy Company, and from a well-being perspective, where I've been able to play a role is when some of these things happen at a country level, like we supported with the floods, we supported with the riots, where people wouldn't have access into these kind of well-being tools. It's important to be playing this role everywhere you can as a leader.
Just to wrap up our interview with you, it is Women's Month. What is Discovery up to?
Wow, I'm so excited to tell you about this. You're one of the first people to find out what we're doing here. But maybe to give a little bit of background. So at very senior levels, there's been a lot of transformation from a gender diversity perspective within Discovery. Well, we've really done well. 60% of our workforce are females, but there's still work for us to be done at more senior levels. And most companies actually struggle with that. Transformation is slower, higher up you go in the organization. And this year, and we've got the support that we need, we are launching what we're calling a platform called DiscoveryWomenMove. Firstly, move because it's so on brand, don't you think? It's like Discovery, we're always moving, physical well-being is important. But more importantly, we are agreeing with the organization that we want to make it shift and a change at higher levels of the organization. So DiscoveryWomenMove is a platform by women, for women. It is a platform that will work with the organization on key targets in terms of what we want to see at very senior levels, in terms of gender diversity and inclusion. And the inclusion part is important because it's one thing to have more women, but you need to make sure that women's viewpoints and input and contribution is really received, is really actioned. And so for us, the diversity and inclusion is important. What is super exciting is that Hilton Kellner, who is the CEO of the South African Composite and is the head of the SA Exco, is in complete support, and so is the South African Exco. So we are really thrilled that over the next couple of years, we as the women of Discovery are going to be working closely together, but also with the senior leadership of this business to change the business in terms of diversity and inclusion. And hopefully when you come here again, I'm going to be saying 60% of women at the very top are the leaders of this business.
Nonku, thank you so much for your time. As PSG, we are very proud to be a partner of Discovery Health.
You're so very welcome.
Thank you for tuning in. This has been a very special campaign of PSG R21, and we are glad and delighted that you could join us.